second part about Laudato Si. So how has it been put into action? There's obviously so many initiatives, including my workplace and many other workplaces of participants today, that have really taken on the call of Pope Francis to call for integral ecology, ecological conversion. So today we're going to explore only three of the many, many initiatives, with more to be gathered in the book that Father Josh was mentioning. So first of all, we're going to begin with the Laudato Si action platform, and who better than our late Pope Francis to explain the sentiment behind this wonderful initiative. So we're going to hear his words in a short video.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, con l'enciclica Laudato Si, promulgata nel 2015, invitavo tutte le persone di buona volontà a prendersi cura della terra che è la nostra casa comune. Da tempo ormai questa casa che ci ospita soffre per ferite che noi provochiamo a causa di un atteggiamento predatorio che ci fa sentire padroni del pianeta e delle sue risorse e ci autorizza a un uso irresponsabile del bene, dei beni che Dio ci ha dato. Oggi queste ferite si manifestano drammaticamente in una crisi ecologica senza precedenti, che interessa il suolo, l'aria, l'acqua e in genere l'ecosistema in cui gli esseri umani vivono. L'attuale pandemia poi ha portato alla luce in modo ancora più forte il grido della natura e quello dei poveri che ne subiscono maggiormente le conseguenze, evidenziando che tutto è interconnesso e interdipendente e che la nostra salute non è separata dalla salute dall'ambiente in cui viviamo. Abbiamo bisogno perciò di un nuovo approccio ecologico che trasformi il nostro modo di abitare il mondo, i nostri stili di vita, la nostra relazione con le risorse della terra e in generale il modo di guardare all'uomo e di vivere la vita. Un'ecologia umana integrale che coinvolge non solo le questioni ambientali, ma l'uomo nella sua totalità, diventa capace di ascoltare il grido dei poveri ed essere fermento per una nuova società. Abbiamo una grande responsabilità, specialmente nei confronti delle future generazioni. Che mondo vogliamo lasciare ai nostri bambini e ai nostri giovani? Il nostro egoismo, la nostra indifferenza e i nostri stili irresponsabili stanno minacciando il futuro dei nostri ragazzi. Rinnovo allora il mio appello. Prendiamoci cura della nostra madre terra. Vinciamo la tentazione dell'egoismo che ci rende predatori delle risorse. Coltiviamo il rispetto per i doni della terra, della creazione. Inauguriamo uno stile di vita e una società finalmente ecosostenibili. Abbiamo l'opportunità di preparare un domani migliore per tutti. Dalle mani di Dio abbiamo ricevuto un giardino. Ai nostri figli non possiamo lasciare un deserto. In questo contesto, il 24 maggio 2020, ho indetto l'anno Laudato Si, la cui organizzazione è stata affidata al Dicastero per il Servizio di Sviluppo Umano Integrale. Ringrazio tutti coloro che hanno celebrato quest'anno con moltissime iniziative. Oggi sono lieto di annunciare che l'anno Laudato Si sfocerà in un progetto di azione concreto, la Laudato Si Action Platform, un cammino di 7 anni che vedrà impegnate in diversi modi le nostre comunità, perché diventino totalmente sostenibili nello spirito dell'ecologia integrale. Vorrei dunque invitare tutti ad affrontare questo cammino insieme. In particolare mi rivolgo a queste 7 realtà: famiglie, parrocchie e diocesi, scuole e università, ospedali, imprese e aziende agricole, organizzazioni, gruppi e movimenti, istituti religiosi. Lavorare insieme, solo così potremo creare il futuro che vogliamo, un mondo più inclusivo, fraterno, pacifico e sostenibile. In un cammino che durerà per 7 anni, ci lasceremo guidare da 7 oggettivi del Laudato Si che ci indicheranno la direzione mentre perseguiamo la visione dell'ecologia integrale. La risposta al grido della terra, la risposta al grido dei poveri, l'economia ecologica, l'adozione di uno stile di vita semplice, l'educazione ecologica, la spiritualità ecologica e l'impegno comunitario. C'è speranza. Tutti possiamo collaborare, ognuno con la propria cultura ed esperienza, ciascuno con le proprie iniziative e capacità, perché la nostra madre terra ritorni alla sua originale bellezza e la creazione torni a risplendere secondo il progetto di Dio. Dio benedica ognuno di voi e benedica la nostra missione di ricostruire la nostra casa comune.
Thank you. Apologies for ending the screen sharing a bit soon, but I think we can all agree that we would not be gathered here today doing this important work and these important conversations without the late Pope Francis's prophetic voice, his vision, but also all the communities that have really responded to his call. So thank you to Pope Francis and thank you to everybody who has listened to him nowadays. And let's move on to our next speaker. I would like to invite Lorna Gold, director of the Laudato Si movement, to come and share more about her work and the work of the movement. Yes, I see you now, Lorna. Sorry. Welcome, Lorna.
Thank you, Mariana. And I'm filled with emotion listening to Pope Francis and his call to arms, really, or call to peace, with the Laudato Si Action platform. I think each of us can look inside ourselves and think 5 years have passed since he made that call to everybody to join forces with him. So today's theme is just so timely. It was Hannah Arendt, the well-known Jewish American political philosopher, who wrote, "Power corresponds to the human ability not just to act, but to act in concert." And I find this phrase from someone who experienced the worst of totalitarianism and the Nazi regime just so timely for the times that we're living in today. Pope Francis often spoke of popular movements, movements that emerge not just from institutions or strategic plans, but from ordinary people who discover their connection to one another at a particular moment in history. Popular movements cannot simply be engineered, though they do require institutional and organisational backbone to be sustained. They emerge when a profound truth meets a historical moment. They become a power to act in concert. And I believe that is exactly what happened with Laudato Si, and perhaps why many of us are here today. 10 years ago, Pope Francis did far more than publish a social encyclical. He gave expression to a profound truth that was already seeking to emerge and helped reframe humanity's place in creation. He reminded us, as we've already heard several times, that everything is interconnected. That simple insight has profound consequences. The environmental destruction, social injustice, economic exclusion, spiritual emptiness are not separate crises. As Edgar Morin describes them, they are part of a polycrisis. So the question is, if the crises are interconnected, our response, in a sense, the work we need to do is the work of reconnection. That work of reconnection is the principal mission of the Laudato Si movement. We do many programs, of course, but I would say that principally the Laudato Si movement seeks to create the conditions in which people rediscover interconnectedness of life and discover they're part of a greater story than themselves. Charles Taylor speaks of the social imaginary, the shared way societies imagine life together. Pope Francis offers us, through Laudato Si, and now Pope Leo has affirmed this also magnificently in Magnificat Humanitas, the way of integral ecology. Our work as LSM is therefore fundamentally relational. We seek to reconnect people to God, with creation, and to each other. And like the mycelium beneath the forest, these relationships quietly nourish and regenerate the wider ecosystem of the church and society. Our role is not to build a movement from scratch, but to weave together the thousands of initiatives the Spirit is already bringing to life, and help in our way of service to act in concert and reshape our common imagination. Today, this movement, which many of you are familiar with, so I'm talking to people who already know this, is growing at an extraordinary pace, especially in the global south, but also in North America. It includes more than 25,000 local trained leaders, the animators, 80 national chapters, members now present in 140 countries, and thousands of institutions, as we just heard, participating in the Laudato Si Action Platform, which we as LSM, as a secretariat, are blessed to manage on behalf of the dicastery. So there's this almost umbilical cord link between these two initiatives. And countless local initiatives fostering ecological conversion and calling for system change. We are now entering the second decade of Laudato Si against a growing and dark backdrop. If the first decade was about raising awareness, the second must be about widening and deepening participation. People no longer want simply to support causes. They want to feel a sense of agency. They want to belong. And they want a hope that's more than wishful thinking or optimism. As Margaret Wheatley reminds us, there's no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. And this is what we see each day as Laudato Si animators are awakened through training and through a connection with others and touched by the spirit of Laudato Si. They become protagonists of ecological conversion and co-creators in that great turning that Thomas Berry and many others have called about. Perhaps the greatest lesson we've all learned in the past few decades is that the ecological crisis cannot be solved by governments alone, or indeed large actors, nor by markets, nor by technology. Whilst all of these have a place, it requires that bold cultural revolution that Pope Francis calls for. And culture changes when people move together. That is why creating a people's movement is not peripheral to addressing the ecological crisis. It's one of the essential conditions for addressing it. And I believe that the church, with its communities, spirituality, movements, and global reach, working alongside people of all faiths, has a unique contribution, and I would indeed say a decisive contribution to make at this moment in history. Our vocation as Laudato Si movement is not to build an empire of Laudato Si. That's not what we're about. It's about revealing and helping to reveal and to connect the pieces of what is already emerging across the world, and to try to connect it, to nurture it, and to invite millions of people to join forces with us. The future won't be shaped by a handful of heroic individuals, even though we always look to leaders such as Pope Leo to show the moral courage we are all desperately wanting to see. It will be shaped by millions of ordinary people like us who choose to live differently, to find their agency in community, to lead and to act together in concert. So my invitation to us all today is a simple one. Yes, let's study this movement, but let's also recognise that we are all part of this movement. We are the movement we have been waiting for. Let's not just admire it at a distance, but let's throw our weight behind an expansive understanding of Laudato Si in movement, in the hope that we can come together in concert to bring about the ecological conversion our church and our world need today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorna. And after this really inspiring conversation, I would really like to invite everyone to take up Lorna's words of figuring out what is it that you can do today to foster that work of reconnection with God, with creation, and with each other. Where can you begin? How can you involve your community in this reconnection? And to get further inspired for this reconnection, I would like to invite Alan Ottaro to talk to us about the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa. Alan, you are so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mariana, and also deep gratitude to Lorna, Pierluigi, Father Josh, and everybody on the panel, but also to congratulate all those who have finished this course on integral ecology, and to welcome them to be part of this people's movement that we're all creating together, co-creating together, and working together in common mission of care for a common home. When I first saw this invitation and the title of the conference, Creating a People's Movement for the Care of Our Common Home, I found it a theme that is also particularly relevant and that I like in many ways, because it certainly encloses experiences that my colleagues and I here in Africa through the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa have had in the last several years of mobilizing young Catholics across the continent to really take up our individual but also shared vocation of care for our common home. And so while I was reflecting what to share with you all this afternoon here in Nairobi, I thought maybe I'll just begin by kind of a personal story of how I came to this, and then gradually move with you towards where we are today and the things we've learned and what has inspired us and how we are looking at going forward. So I saw the name Wangari Maathai in Father Josh's, one of Father Josh's first slide. It was one of the trailblazers. And certainly for myself as a young boy growing up here in Kenya, when we spoke and heard about environmentalism, the ecological movement, it was impossible to escape the name of Professor Wangari Maathai. She was really a trailblazer, first African woman to receive a Nobel Peace Prize. But here in Kenya, we particularly knew her from her work with the Green Belt movement, mobilizing women in the local communities, particularly in the central parts of Kenya, to plant trees and to grow trees because of what she saw happening in the communities, the drying up of streams, drying up of rivers, and the impact that this had on the community, whether it's about food security, provision of water, and holding together the social fabric of the communities. And for me, this was also something very similar. I grew up on the slopes of the Mau forest ecosystem in the Rift Valley highlands of Kenya, and I saw the gradual destruction of the local forest ecosystem, even though at that time it did not hit me that this was something that was actually detrimental. But gradually, in a number of years, and with time, we began to see the local rainfall patterns being affected, how that, of course, also had an impact on local agricultural production, provision of water for the community. We never had piped water in our home, so we relied on rainfall, rainwater harvesting, and so on. And that became more and more challenging, to get in terms of the rainfall patterns and agricultural production. And much later, a confluence of these experiences came together when I was very much involved in youth, young adult ministry with the church here in Kenya, to say, why is it that we do not have young Catholics who are actively championing, who are actively involved, who are deeply grounded in Catholic social teaching, with a particular focus on the environmental question? And this was before even Laudato Si, the publication of the encyclical, so way back in 2012. But we did find quite a lot of literature, quite a lot of material and resources that had been already compiled from different papal documents and other letters, addresses to international conferences about the role of every one of us in care for a common home. And so we found some solace, we found some grounding in those initial documents and material to say, can we start to go deeper and find for ourselves what is it that we can do as young people, and how do we connect with each other? Those who are already doing something, but those of us who are willing to be more involved in this action. And so we said, let's create a platform, let's create a network, let's create, if I might borrow the title of today's topic, a people's movement of young Catholics across the African continent. And so we set for ourselves three main areas. We said, let's look at how Catholic social teaching invites us to live this vocational care for a common home. Because certainly there are many, many ecological initiatives and movements of different kinds. But what would be our particular grounding, our particular motivation? What is it that will ground us in this work and call us to it? It's Catholic social teaching. And so we set out to discover, the different principles of Catholic social teaching and how those then lead us to respond to the particular needs in our communities and how those are then connected to others across our continent. And then the second element was the element of networking and advocacy. Many times when I went to different forums with young people here in Africa, with much older people, particularly those in decision-making spaces on policy issues and so on, at government level or other civil society levels, they would often say to us, well, you have beautiful ideas as young people in Africa, but you're not organized. So go organize yourselves and then come back to us with a specific recommendations or way forward of what you would like to do and how you would like to be supported. So through this, we said, well, SINESA might then be a platform, might be that channel, might be that vehicle through which any young person on the continent who has a particular idea or initiatives, but lacks that organization that then helps them to channel and to reach those who make decisions and to be able to advocate for their communities, could use, and to offer that platform and that idea and that space as an opportunity for such advocacy and action. But then how do we also anchor our actions in our specific communities? How do we respond concretely to the needs that we see? And then the aspect of grassroots action comes through that. So whether it is regular cleanups in our local communities, through our parishes and in our dioceses, or tree growing and tree planting initiatives in various parishes in the different countries we are represented, but also those who are working to help, for example, conserve the oceans. I'm thinking, for example, now of the dioceses in Mombasa, in Dar es Salaam, where they are, very close to the Indian Ocean, and they are always looking to see how they can involve local communities to be more responsive to their local surroundings. And so what we've learned over this time are three things. That any initiatives of a people's movement should look towards its grounding in social justice, particularly in the case of Africa, where as a continent that contributes the least to the climate crisis, we are on the front lines, and many countries are suffering the worst impacts of the climate crisis. So how do we also integrate social justice into our approach? Then we also need to be thinking globally as we act locally. And for us, this is particularly relevant because we are looking to see how the young people can act where they are, but joining hands together across our different realities lived on this beautiful continent of ours here in Africa. And then lastly, current and future generations. Now, this is also particularly interesting for us here at Sinesa because we often went to different fora where the refrain was that young people are the leaders of tomorrow. But then tomorrow never seems to arrive. And so we said, well, we are leaders of both today and tomorrow. So we are looking at the actions of both current, thinking about current and future generations. And finally, in conclusion, there is this African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Now, the ecological crisis that we are facing right now is such that we need to go far, but we also need to go fast together. And I think the people's movement that we are creating, that all of us are part of in one way or another, that is all interconnected in terms of the concept of integral ecology will help us to achieve that in a spirit of hope and transformation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you. I think from this, we can all be inspired, as you said, to apply your experience to our own experiences through grounding in Catholic social teaching, networking, organizing, action, coming up with concrete activities, rooting our work in social justice, thinking globally, and going together. So thank you so much, Alan, for all these ideas.